Breath of the Wild. Arguably one of the best games to come from the masterminds of Nintendo. As soon as the phrase open world Zelda was said in January of 2013, the entire community went into a frenzy, and it did not disappoint. With its flawless combat, epic adventuring, and with an attention to detail nearly unmatched by light games, Breath of the Wild was instantly placed at the top echelon of Nintendo games, a feat rarely achieved. And with this popularity brought gamers of all skills, from casuals who just enjoyed the mountain views, to challengers who grinded every Korok seed. But today, we're talking about one very select group of gamers, a group that would push this game to its limits. And doing so, they would discover that Breath of the Wild is a broken game. A game perfect, almost tailor-made for speedrunning. With every bug and glitch, almost and fail, rivalry and victory, this is their story. Welcome to Breath of the Wild Any% Speedrun. Just so we're clear, I want to explain how the run works. When the game starts, your first task is to complete the tutorial and get off the Great Plateau. Next, you make your way to Hyrule Castle and load up on weapons and food. And lastly, you kill the final 6 bosses. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to divide the game into these sections. Cool? Cool. The first to complete the game will forever be the first speedrun. What better way to start a history of world record runs than to show the first completion ever? With only 2 days of access, Orcastraw beat the game in 3 hours and 39 minutes. Granted, this was hardly a speedrun. Orcastraw simply played through the game more or less as the developers intended, doing the plateau, then head to the castle, all while getting the necessary loot to complete this massive game in about 3.5 hours. While this run was never formally submitted, it technically was the first speedrun. The next run would come on the same day. Cephla would kill Ganon with a 2 hours and 22 minute time, over an hour faster. How could an hour be cut on the very first day? See, Orcastraw went to Gerudo to get Urbosa's Fury. While this made it so you could stunlock Ganon, it did add about an hour and a half of playtime. Seth decided to not go for the guaranteed strat and instead went for a bit more of a straightforward fight. Aside from not taking this massive detour, the strategy didn't change much, and Breath of the Wild would have its first submitted world record run. The first big hurdle of getting a Breath of the Wild world record was your very first task, getting off the Great Plateau. The process goes: complete the Shrine of Resurrection, initiate the first tower, then complete the 4 shrines as fast as you can, then go talk to the old man at the Temple of Time. While this was only the first of the 3 game sections, completing it would determine if you were on a world record pace run or if you were resetting. The first widely accepted strategy was to complete the tower, then do the bomb shrine, then teleport back to the tower, go to the Magnesis shrine, teleport back to the Shrine of Resurrection, run to the Cryonis shrine, run to the Stasis shrine, then finally head back to the Temple of Time. In short, you simply headed to the shrine you could run to the fastest. Since we're here, let's discuss the other 2 sections of the run. After you finish the Great Plateau, how do you get to Hyrule Castle the fastest? And how do you get all the gear you need for the gauntlet of bosses at the end? Well, the first part's pretty simple. The fastest way to get to Hyrule Castle is to find a horse and sprint your way there. Once there though, you'll have to find a way in. Now, it would take too long to climb your way there, so instead of trying to find a way to parkour into Hyrule Castle, why don't you just go over it? Climbing the outside pylons allowed you to skip all the mini-bosses and most of the climbing, but once in, you'll need to scavenge the outside and inside of the castle. The first strategies involved going everywhere from the guards' chambers, to the Lionel, to Zelda's room, and everywhere in between. The final bosses have a lot of health, so getting a lot of weapons, and especially arrows, is paramount. Once you get to the final bosses, the initial strategies for the Blights stayed relatively the same for all 4. Stun with arrows or dodge attacks, and then pummel with swords. Ganon was fought almost exactly how Nintendo intended. Shoot arrows where you could, dodge attacks where you could, and hope you brought enough weapons to last the whole fight. And lastly, Dark Beast Cannon. Now, funnily enough, the strategies for Dark Beast haven't changed that much. Since the final fight is essentially a glorified whack-a-mole simulator, outside of some minor routing changes, the strategy to beat Dark Beast hasn't changed since day one of the speedrun. Just memorize the spawn points and don't miss. As you can imagine, with a new game of this magnitude, the initial days were nothing short of chaotic. New world records were being set left and right. In its first 2 weeks, the 3 most notable strategy updates were whistle sprinting, a way to quote-unquote sprint without waiting for cooldown, infinite horse stamina, yeah, and finally, a way to keep Phase 2 Ganon stun locked without Urbosa's Fury. And with this, the original strategies were locked, and the first wave of Breath of the Wild record holders was born.
There we go.
World record! Yes! Fuck.
I think it's safe to say 2017 was a wild year. Just for context, Breath of the Wild released in March. 2017's last record was in August. So in 5 months, 30 world records were hit by 7 different runners. But the crazy part, the basic way runners completed the game didn't change. There was a new shrine route. Now it was Magnesis, Shrine of Resurrection, Cryonis, Stasis, Bombs, then back to the temple. Runners were now going slightly out of their way to make an attack up potion. This way they wouldn't have to loot the castle as long as they previously had to. And the game's physics engine was just starting to be explored, with boulder bounces and box hops. These changes kept the game exciting, but the basic concept of the speedrun didn't change. Through raw talent and endless hours, these legendary gamers grinded their hearts out to drop the world record by almost 3 hours, ending with a 39:25 by runner Ikkitrix. However, after this new time, the world records just stopped. With the new game hype wearing off and no new strategies being found, Breath of the Wild would enter a dormant phase. People would still run the game, but no new records would be set.
Let's go, dude. Let's fucking go. Yeah, it's a world record. Old world record was 39:25.
7 months later, interest would respark. The runner Wolhaiksong, or just Song, had been running the category for a while, with very little luck. But with this half-a-year drought, he had plenty of time to grind, and after a long day of streaming, Song broke the 7-month drought and lowered the world record a little bit lower. A couple months later, the runner Lulucore decided to put his name on the list. And not to be outdone, a month later, Song responded back with a 37:50, and the record would stay right here. 4 months. It looked like another drought was going to start, until it happened. Not one, but 2 new glitches were discovered: scope clipping and shrine clipping. Scope clipping allowed you to leave the Shrine of Resurrection much faster, and shrine clipping allows you to get into shrines without having to do the long raising the tower section. See, when you don't activate the tower, the doors of the shrines don't open, so you need to clip into them to progress, eliminating the tower portion of the run entirely. While they had been known about for a while, they were never properly utilized in runs, but Song was able to find spots and was able to lower the world record once again. Side note, in speedrunning, games usually see a surge of popularity whenever new glitches are found. Breath of the Wild is no different. When these glitches were found, popularity boomed. Breath of the Wild speedruns were in the spotlight again. Quick note, right around this time, the speedrun moderators made a pretty big decision. They would revamp the way they timed runs. Now, runs would start when you gain control of Link instead of when you hit New Game. Ultimately, this would make the following runs more consistent, but this is also when a lot of older runners would either never get another world record or would stop running altogether. Props to them for paving the way and setting the foundations, but something quite fantastic was on the horizon. See, Song was a god tier runner, one of the best this game has ever seen, but someone was rising up to challenge his reign. Let me give you guys a little insight on speedrunning. People grinding for months or even years to lower their time is nothing new. Gamers develop whole careers on optimizing microseconds off of world records. But one of the rarest and most sought after things in gaming is when two gamers are in contention for a world record. Two dedicated players grinding their hearts out, pushing each other back and forth. Cheese and Puncation, Darbian and Cosmic, everyone, and I mean everyone, loves a good speedrun race. Breath of the Wild was just about to introduce its first true speedrunning rivalry. Between Song and the newly crowned champion, Rasenurns, things were lining up for an epic showdown. At least that's what I would have said if it wasn't for one thing. One of the biggest updates in all of gaming. What in the world could improve this? Two new tricks, a rivalry still in its infancy, and a game with a growing repopularity. This is the framework, if done right, for a speedrunning revolution. How on earth could this situation get better? How about a third glitch? And not just any glitch. One so game-changing, so eye-catching, so meta-shattering, that it would rival the fame of the Super Mario pipe clip, Ocarina's early Ganon, or even the backwards long jump. I present to you the bullet time bounce. I don't even need to explain why this was so groundbreaking. Breath of the Wild's physics engine, being pushed to its limits, allowed players to fly across the map at ungodly speeds, opening the door for minutes to be taken off the world record. Don't get me wrong, bullet time bounces, or BTBs, are a fairly hard trick that takes weeks or even months to fully get the hang of. But between these monstrosities of tricks, two gamers ready to be pushed to their max, and a hungry community waiting to see what was to come, what happened next was something truly rare and truly, truly special.
Nice. That's a decent angle.
With the race well underway, Song and Raisin were both locked in. But they noticed that sub 30 was well within their skill levels. This was it. Time to get serious. Rasenurns brings home the victory. Sub 30 was finally a reality. But the crazy part? This game felt nowhere close to being truly optimized. Both runners then realized sub 30 was just a taste. Time to see what this game could actually do. This was runner Sketodara, or just Skeet. He had been grinding Breath of the Wild on the side, trying to catch up to Song and Raisin. It took a while, but he was finally able to land his first world record. One thing to remember, the mentality of speedrunners at this current time was extremely inclusive. If you proved you were a contender, you were welcomed to the ranks of Breath of the Wild speedrunning. The duo rivalry of Song and Raisin was now upgraded to a trio. Skeet was now one of the 3 champions in contention for the world record. Maybe it's just me, but I think Breath of the Wild likes to find new things in the winter months. September and October respectively, 2 new glitches would drive the record, once again, even lower. The October glitch was a way to kill Wind Blight with a single arrow. Yeah, I know. This works because when you fire an arrow at a nearly frame-perfect location, it will remain frozen in air during the cutscene. This location just happens to be where Wind Blight is located, and he'll take enough damage that you'll be able to finish him off with just that one shot. And the September glitch could potentially be ranked as the most popular glitch in Breath of the Wild. So much so that a wave of speedrunners would join the cause because of how satisfying this one trick was. The Wind Bomb. How this works is, Link drops one bomb, activates bullet time, drops your second bomb, then activates the first bomb. This proceeds to rocket Link across the map whenever the player needs a sudden boost of speed. While the Wind Bomb was not the only reason, 2019 overall is where this game's popularity started to hit main stage status. Speedruns at Games Done Quick, content creators like Point Crow, Limcube, Small Ant, and so many more had channels majorly or even solely dedicated to this insane game. A vast majority of them focused on the speedrunning side of things. With 2 new major tricks and an ever-growing popularity, once again, Breath of the Wild was starting to see new signs of major growth. When all of a sudden, a certain something kept everyone inside during 2020. Normally, something like this would be a detriment, and I'm not saying it wasn't a horrible thing, but with a growing popularity and a large group of people stuck inside with nothing to do, Breath of the Wild speedruns went from being an actively run hobby to a household name.
Nice. Yeah, it's a Mio PV for sure. I think. Finally, dude. It's been so long, dude. It's been so long.
These 3 gamers, Song, Raisin, and Skeet, ran the Breath of the Wild speedrunning scene. Except for one time by runner Majestic, the world record was held by one of the original trio 35 out of 36 times for 2.5 years. Domination is putting it very mildly. From the middle of 2018 to the end of 2020, nothing could stop these three gamers from continuing to hold the top spot. Right? This is Player5, a gamer who had been grinding Breath of the Wild, clawing ever closer and closer to the world record, and finally reaching his goal. One bit of context, around this time, a new castle strategy had been discovered. Here is the old strategy side by side for comparison. As you can see, this new way to traverse the castle opened the door for lower times than anyone thought possible. And as you guessed, with new tricks brings new players. Player5 was the one to take advantage of this the most, and got to work with a new goal in mind. See, over the following months, Player5 showed he was more than just a contender for the world record. He had the opportunity to be the best. And as I'm sure many of you are aware, minute barriers are something quite special in speedrunning. Seeing a clock drop from 00 to 59 is something very sought after. And at this time, Breath of the Wild was approaching a very noteworthy minute barrier. The community as a whole was very, very hungry for someone to finally take this game under the 25-minute mark, and all eyes were on Player5. He had set 9 world records in 5 months, and everyone was ready for the 10th. Months passed, and gamers of all skill levels were ready. And on one October day, something quite special happened.
So for a while, it didn't seem like sub 25 was that doable, and so like it took a while to get to the point where I started to believe that I'd be able to do it. At a certain point, I realized sub 25 is possible. You just have to play really well. It actually was like really good on plateau. Like, so the first half of the run was just insane. It's the best I had ever played it, which at the time meant, yeah, it was the best anyone had ever done plateau. I scanned in amiibos, got really good RNG. I got unloaded magnesis, which, you know, it's a big RNG. I got the wind bomb inside bombs, which is, you know, gamer wind bomb. So at this point, I think after unloaded mag is when I was really like, oh, this is a good run. And then I hit gamer wind bomb. I was like, really, this is a good run. But then with the old plateau, and like you had to hit a frame perfect BTB right after plateau. And yeah, at that point, it was definitely feeling like the run. Going through castle, I think the only mistake I made was missing the clip, the skill clip. Going into blights, I think at this point I wasn't that far ahead, but I knew I had time saving blights. Of course, the RNG in Fire Blight, you can just get up early. That didn't happen, and so I ended up pretty far ahead going into Calamity. And Calamity was actually, I'd say, the most stressful part of the run. This one specifically, it's supposed to go like you flurry rush at the beginning, you go grab the 10 bomb arrows, and then you fire off bomb arrow headshots until you grab the claymore. From there, you're supposed to get a laser from Calamity. But sometimes Calamity just doesn't give you the laser, Because if he doesn't, then the run's kind of dead. Which he does. But then also in phase 2, there's like RNG on the first attack you can get, and so you want the laser instantly. So right there, I was like, if I didn't get instant laser, the sub 25 was dead. But he did give me the instant laser. Actually, it's kind of funny because Dark Beast, I think I said like no risky pre-fires. The only way I could lose it is by missing shots. I told myself that, and then got like essentially a frame perfect pre-fire on the first one. So it was, that was a little scary, honestly.
With the God Run finally coming to a close, all Player 5 had to do was shoot the final arrow, and he and his chat could finally celebrate.
Yes!
Oh my god, dude.
Sub 25 was a monumental achievement, one felt by Zelda fans the world over, and this record would remain at the top for the rest of 2021. But as expected, it's the winter months. A new trick was discovered. This mess of a tech is called the Bow Lift Smuggle Slide, or BLSS. I'm not going to get into the how this works. All I know is that it allows Link to fly through the air at very fast speeds, much more consistently than wind bombs or bullet time bounces. This new trick brought along a new wave of runners. All the while, aside from one time by runner Koroks, Player 5 would continue his near uncontested world record streak. Currently sitting at a 23:51, the record still has some room to be lowered. And while the future remains uncertain, we have to remember where this game came from. From a game that was played almost casually to being broken beyond belief. From March of 2017 to January of 2023, 96 world records have been hit by 15 different runners. This was their story. I hope you had as much fun watching this video as I did making it. Have a great day. If you liked the way I rambled through this video, and if you want to see monthly-ish gaming history videos, please consider hitting that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks.